Sahana bhavatu Sahano bhunaktu Sahaviryam karvavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om. May we, teacher and student, be protected. May we both be nourished. May we work together with great energy. May our intellect be sharpened. May our study be effective. Let there be no animosity amongst the teacher and the taught. Om. Peace in me, peace in nature, peace in divine forces.
Thank you, Prachiti. So, a brief introduction about VSC JNU. The Vivekananda Study Circle, VSC, of Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi, was formed on 1st of November 2014 the teachings of Swami Vivekananda, Sri Ramakrishna, and Sri Sharada Devi with the aim of molding our lives based on the Vedantic truth of oneness. VSC JNU is non-political, non-religious, non-profit, independent organization run by faculty members, students, and alumni of JNU. We usually meet every Saturday to study the scriptures and the work of Swami Vivekananda and practice chanting and meditation. We also hold public talks and retreat programs. So, we are celebrating Swamiji's birth anniversary with a special lecture series. And we welcome today everyone to the second or maybe the last talk in the series. So, I invite Arpita to welcome the speaker, introduce the theme, and uh, conduct the talk and discussion. So before handing it over to Arpita Didi, a gentle reminder and the general instructions for the audience. Kindly switch off your video camera and microphone during the webinar session. This is especially for the people who are attending us with Google Meet. And audience can write their questions during the session in the chat box. Live questions will be taken up after the speaker or panelists have finished speaking. If you would like to be included in the mailing list or would like to share your valuable suggestions or feedback, or you want to join us in our regular classes and wish to receive notifications, may please email us to vscjnu@gmail.com. We would be very happy to have you there. Thank you. Arpita Didi, over to you.
Namaste everyone and welcome to today's webinar. In December 1892, just before Swamiji went to Kanyakumari, he was visiting Trivandrum, where he was the guest of one Professor Sundararama Iyer. Professor Iyer's son, K.S. Ramaswamy Shastri, was then a college student. He writes in his reminiscences that one day Swamiji said to him and his father, "Practical patriotism means not a mere sentiment or even emotion of love of the motherland, but a passion to serve our fellow countrymen. I have gone all over India on foot and have seen with my own eyes the ignorance, misery, and squalor of our people. My whole soul is afire, and I am burning with a fierce desire to change such evil conditions. If you want to find God, serve man. To reach Narayana, you must serve the Daridra Narayanas, the starving millions of India." Thus, Swamiji gave us this concept of practical patriotism. In our last VSC talk, Revered Swami Atmashraddhananda made a very significant point. He said that historically, the people of India have been habituated to the king taking care of everything. It is only in modern times that we suddenly became citizens in a democratic setup. And herein, Swamiji's key role is in teaching us how to be good citizens, how to care for our neighbor, how to serve our not so well off brothers and sisters. With these words, I welcome our first speaker today, Sritaron Goswami. Tarunga is a noted journalist. He's presently resident editor at Millennium Post, Kolkata. Earlier, he was with the Statesman, Kolkata. He was educated at St. Lawrence High School, where the Jesuit fathers introduced him to Swami Vivekananda sometime at the end of the 1970s. He did his BA in philosophy from Presidency College and MA from the University of Calcutta. He has done a lot of research on Swami Vivekananda and writes regularly on him for newspapers and different magazines, and has spoken on several platforms about his ideals. He's also a well-known practitioner of a rare art form, singing whistling. He has many performances and albums to his credit. With these words, I now welcome Tarunga to take over the mic.
Thank you. Am I audible?
Yes.
Am I audible? Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. After Swamiji's death in 1902, Satish Chandra Ghosh, one of his college mates, made an important observation about Swamiji to Sister Nivedita. Ghosh said, India was Swamiji's greatest passion. The thought of India was virtually an obsession with him. India throbbed in his breast. India beat in his pulses. India was his daydream. India was his nightmare. Not only that, he became India. He was the embodiment of India in flesh and blood. He was India. He was Bharat. After coming back from the West in the early 1897, when the Calcuttans gave a civic reception to Swamiji, Swamiji in response said, one wants to lose the individual in the universal. One renounces, flies off, and cuts himself off from all the associates of the body and the past. One works hard even to forget that he is a man. Yet in the heart of his heart, one string vibrating, one whisper which always tells him that east or west, home is best. Swamiji had special attraction for India. It was not just because it was his motherland, but because he knew that the philosophy of synthesis, unless it is said, unless people follow this, the whole civilization will crash and crumble. If we look at today's world, there is lack of synthesis in human behavior, in social behavior, in political behavior, and in the behavior of the country. So what is required is synthesis of mind. And when one practices this in life, he is elevated to a higher status. This was Vivekananda's faith. So always he spoke about synthesis, and this he learned from Sri Ramakrishna. We must remember, when we discuss about Vivekananda, we must remember two important things. One is, during 190 years of British rule, from 1757 to 1947, the Britishers were scared of only one person. It was Vivekananda. When Vivekananda came back from the West, he was given a reception by Shobha Bazar Football Club. Swamiji kicked a ball and said, we must learn to protest. Earlier in South India, he said, we are not going to tolerate the tyranny of the minority over majority. And he spoke about patriotism and nationalism. His nationalism was different, which I'll explain. And when Vivekananda addressed the Chicago Conference in 1893, Aurobindo's observation is very important. Going forth of Vivekananda, marked out by the master as the heroic soul, destined to take the universe in his two hands and change it, was the first visible sign that India is awake, not only to survive, but to conquer. It was Vivekananda who first said that India has many things to give to the world. Because of British rule, we always believed that we were inferior to the British. And it was this divide and rule policy, followed by the East India Company, and later by the British Crown, which divided our society in so many segments. When Vivekananda traveled in India, he saw two things: oppression by the British and oppression by his own fellow men. Those who learned English, those who got lights of English education, those who got jobs in different offices, used to torture those who were hapless. And Sri Ramakrishna's only message to Narendranath was that you should look after them. You should become like a banyan tree. People will sit under your shade. Some will break the branches. The birds will come and they'll spoil you. But who cares for that? Your duty is to serve the country, serve society. And with this motto, Swamiji went to the West, and in his first lecture, he identified those who were responsible for the misery of the world. Sectarianism, bigotry, and its horrible descendant fanaticism have long possessed this beautiful art. They fill the earth with violence, drenched it often and often with human blood, destroyed civilizations, and sent whole nations to despair. Had it not been for these horrible demons, human society would be far more advanced than it is now. Swamiji's main target were people with who were not ready to accept the views of others. This is the biggest misery of society in those days, and also in today's world, this is the biggest malady, that we are not going to accept the views of others, and the society is divided into two halves, us and they. Those who follow my views are my friends. Those who oppose my views should be shunned, hated, and destroyed. Swamiji was against this. Indian philosophy talks about synthesis of mind. If we read Vedanta seriously, there is this oneness, and this oneness should be preached and practiced, Vivekananda believed. In the West, he spoke about universal religion. As a matter of fact, he was the first person to talk about universal religion. On 19th of September 1893, he delivered a lecture, paper on Hinduism. There he spoke elaborately about universal religion. And universal religion is showing respect to others. He said, it will be a religion which will have no location in place or time, which will be infinite like God it will preach, whose sun will shine upon the followers of Krishna and of Christ, on saints and sinners alike, which will not be Brahminic or Buddhistic, Christian or Mohammedan, but a sum total of all these, and still have infinite space for development. This was very important. This religion, universal religion, he was so confident about it that he said that Ashoka's council was a council for the Buddhist sect. Akbar's, though more to the purpose, was only a parlor meeting. It was reserved for America to proclaim to all quarter of the globe that there is Lord in every religion. And we know that at the valedictory session, he said, upon the banner of every religion, will soon be written, in spite of great resistance, help and not fight, assimilation and not destruction, peace and harmony and not dissension. Now, how to achieve this universal religion? The universal religion can be achieved only through service and nothing else. If you serve a person, you are not concerned about his religion, about his caste, about his educational background, about his social background, about his economic status. You go and serve him. So when we serve human beings as gods, we are elevated to a higher level. And when we are elevated to a higher level, slowly and slowly, hatred for others, jealousy, all these vices go. So Swamiji spoke about universal religion, and to practice universal religion, he set up Ramakrishna Mission, where the motto is selfless service. This is very important. Self should not come in the way. When we serve others, the ego always remains that I am serving a person from a higher plane. This should go. When we serve others, we should consider ourselves to be that we are benefited, we are fortunate enough to help others. Unless this feeling is there, we fail to understand Vivekananda, and also we fail to translate his thoughts into actions. If we look at today's society, the young boys and girls, they have superb intelligence. They are very sensitive. They are very intelligent, but they lack one thing. Since they don't mix with people from early days of life, they fail to understand the views of others. Unless you go and serve people physically, you never come close to them. When we were in school, the Jesuit fathers took us to the slums of the late 70s, deplorable. people lived. It's unbelievable to see the slums of those days. Now the fathers used to take us to the slums just to get us acquainted with those people. And so that from early child, from school days, we could think about them. And the moment we got the earliest opportunity, we tried to serve them. When we passed out from schools, there are many good students who later became doctors and engineers from St. Lawrence. So we have formed an organization called SLOBA, St. Lawrence Old Boys Association, and every Sunday for the past 35 years, we are running a medical clinic where the best doctors in the city, they examine the slum dwellers and give medicines free of cost. In this way, we serve people. The service is very important, very, very important. After Ramakrishna Mission was founded on May 1, 1897, Swami Akhandanandaji founded the Shargachi Ashram for the orphans on 15th of May 1897, and he went on serving them. He considered the little boys and girls as gods. Swamiji, he said in one of his letters to Alasinga Perumal, I am the servant of that God whom the ignorant by mistake calls man. Then again he says, I do not believe in that God who cannot give me bread here, giving me eternal bliss in heaven. So for Swamiji, the world was heaven. For Swami, the human beings are gods. Unless we follow this in practice in our own lives, it is not possible for us to understand Vivekananda, number one. Number two, it is not possible for us to have peace of mind. Think of two great persons. One was Bertrand Russell, who was a scholar, a Nobel laureate, a philosopher, and Sophia Loren, a great actress. If you read the autobiographies written by them, you will find that both they used to run after peace, and peace never came. Vivekananda, the Westerners accepted Vivekananda in 1893 because he had given the message of peace. You can have peace by thinking of others. You can have peace if we always work for others. Swamiji said, a leader is one who, undaunted by the waves of samsara, which is full of errors and delusions, sufferings, with one hand wipes the tears of others, and with the other unshaken shows the paths of deliverance. So it's the duty of the leader to wipe out the tears from the eyes of others. This is very important. This what we are missing these days. We do not see people who cry for others. When you see someone suffering, when you see someone living in a deplorable condition, you should cry. That's it. That is the first defining mark of an educated person. And for Vivekananda, the definition was, education is the manifestation of the perfection already in a man. And he said, I want that education by which character is formed, strength of the mind increased, intellect expanded, and by which one can stand on his own feet. So his first condition, that character is formed. Character is the decision to accept the good and shun the evil. This is character. Strength of the mind increased. The person, an educated person, will be able to face the world as it appears before him or her. And then he can stand on his own feet. What we see these days, Swamiji had said in his lecture in Rameshwar that there are in Indian society, there are two types of human beings, Scala and Cherubim. And he said that I support the cherubim. I support those who are orthodox, because though they are orthodox, their feet is on the ground. And the English-speaking Indians, their feet is not on the ground, and their head is turning and turning and turning. Vivekananda was against any kind of imitation. Oh India, this is your terrible danger. The imitating the West is getting such a hold upon you that what is good or what is bad is no longer decided by reasons, discriminations, or reference to the Shastras. The things which the white people praise or like are good. The things which they censor or dislike are bad. Alas, what can be a more tangible proof of foolishness than this? Imitation is bad. Vivekananda, he brought out a Bengali journal for Ramakrishna order. It's called Udbodhan. And at the inaugural, in the first issue, he wrote the editorial where he said that it is Udbodhan's life's mission to blend East and West. Rabindranath in 1909 wrote about a piece on Vivekananda in Bharati Patrika, where he said that he sacrificed his life in its attempt to bridge between East and West. Vivekananda believed that from West technology will come and from East spirituality will go. And unless there is a blend between spirituality and technology, humanity will not get its best. This is very important these days. And after 75 years of independence, it's very unfortunate that we have become imitators. We cannot speak our own language. We do not understand our own countrymen. We do not love this country. There will be plenty of people who have traveled extensively in the United States or Europe, but they do not know India. They do not know the villages. They haven't visited the Himalayas. They haven't seen the valleys. So unless you see the country, unless you see the pulse of the people, unless you feel the pulse of the people, unless you have seen the sorrows of the people with your own eyes, it is not possible for you to contribute anything to society. And a person who thinks only of himself is the saddest person under the sun. As Nietzsche said, after you have shed all your burdens, we become burdened to ourselves. Why, despite so much education, so much information, so much money, we are so unfortunate? We have forgotten to smile. The simple reason is we have closed our doors of the mind. Vivekananda said you should open your door just and go to the people. In one of his letters written in Bengali to his brother monks, he said that those who will come, those who will help me in elevating in removing poverty are sons of Sri Ramakrishna. Those who work for others. He wrote a letter to the Raja of Mysore. This life is short. The vanities of the world are all transient, but they alone live who live for others. The rest are more dead than alive. This was his definition of a sensible human mind. That if you work for others, you are alive. This life is short. The vanities of the world are all transient. And we are busy with the transient things. We are busy with the virtual world. And we forget our own nature. We forget the nature of our colleagues and friends and acquaintances and neighbors. And we always try to oppress them. We always try to show them in ordinary spirit and always and we follow the path of exhibitionism. This is wrong. If you love Vivekananda, if you work for Vivekananda, then the first thing is your own country. Vivekananda said, for the next 50 years, let India be your own God. Let your motherland be your own God. We should forget gods, other gods, which the foreigners have introduced in your midst and which you are following for generations. Your motherland should be your God. This we are not following these days. It's very unfortunate that despite so much education, more and more people are becoming fundamentalists. More and more people cannot see anything beyond their own skin. More and more people get enormous pleasure in injuring the sentiments of others. This is not the path of Vivekananda. All these things are bound to bring misery. And those who work for others, those who feel for others, those who always try to wipe out the tears from others' eyes, they are always happy. In this world, we all run after one thing, that is happiness and nothing else. We want happiness, we want peace. And if we really want happiness and peace, then we have no other choice but to follow the path of Vivekananda, but to accept Vivekananda and follow the path showed by him. With this word, I conclude my speech. And if there is any question, I am ready. I'll try to answer.
Thank you, Tarunga. Am I audible?
Yes, yes.
Yes, yes. Thank you. I don't see any questions in the chat box. So I I had a couple of questions. Before that, yes, you highlighted that Swamiji himself had become India. Now, in fact, Swamiji's brother disciple, Swami Akhandananda ji, whom you referred to, he had said that Swamiji's Desha Prem is not an easy stuff. It is Deshatma Bodh. He had become one with India. And this is also connected with your point about synthesis. I mean, not us and them. When one becomes one with the country, then there's no enemy left. So everybody is your own. So with this, I have two questions for you. One is that how can we catch his fire? How can we imbibe the Vivekananda spirit, especially the spirit of service and patriotism? What are the specific qualities that we need to cultivate in order to mold our characters as per Swamiji's teachings?
So I always think that we should take our children to the orphanages, to the old age home, and to the hospitals to show them how people are suffering. If they see this from their early childhood, there will be a desire to serve them. This is very important. We do not take our children, we do not take our next generation to homes, to orphanages, do we? We do not. We take them to shopping malls. And if you take them to shopping malls, they'll understand one thing, that it is pleasure, which is the most important thing in life. So they are doing that, they're following that path. Instead, if you try, if you take your children to a slum or to slums, and if you allow them to mix with children of their age, slowly and slowly they'll develop love for them. This is very important. Vivekananda, when he was a student, when he didn't come in contact with Ramakrishna, if you read his life story, you will find that he used to go to ordinary people, to the less fortunate people, and spend time with them. So slowly and slowly he developed love for them. And then he came in contact with Sri Ramakrishna, and Sri Ramakrishna gave the final tuning. So this is very important. And we have to see this country. This country is not geography or history. This country is full of people. If we go to different states, you see the differences, and also you discover the oneness. This is India's uniqueness, no? So you have to travel. You have to travel extensively the country to see the people. Vivekananda was the only person who traveled extensively in India, and he saw the people. This is very important. That's why he came to conclude that New India will come from the houses of ordinary people. This was his conviction, because he saw the people. They didn't have food, but they had love, they had respect, and they could work silently. These were the qualities, but they didn't have food. So Vivekananda thought that he should try to give them food, so that they can pursue the finer facets of life.
Okay. Any more questions? Yes, there's one more question in the. This is from Divya, one of our study circle members. Thank you, Goswamiji. Today is Gandhiji's martyrdom. Today is 30th January. So today is Gandhiji's martyrdom day, and last week we read in our study circle, we read some excerpts from his Hind Swaraj, which strikingly resonate with what you have said today about technology, the threat that we can become slaves to machines which are soulless, and yet man is a soul if we believe that God appears in the form of humanity. Divya's question is, what is the path for householders in the service of India? It seems in Sri Ramakrishna and Swamiji and Holy Mother's time, society had more unity and love.
We are responsible for destroying social unity and love. If Buddha told his followers, Atma Deepa Bhavo. If you become a lamp, then one lamp ignites another lamp, and after some time you find the whole area is illuminated. So if you can set up a model home, rest assured that others will follow you. But we do not carry out this experiment. If you start this experiment, that you should lead an ideal life, you should feel for others, not only you, all the family members. You should feel for others. Every night you should read some good text or the other, and the children should participate. If you can set up a model home, rest assured in 1 year or 2 years' time, others will follow you. And when others follow you, within 5 or 6 years, the whole area, the whole locality is elevated. We will have to try, but we have never carried out this experiment.
Okay, I don't think there are any more questions. So thank you so much, Tarunda, for finding time, despite the fact that you have a program right after us.
Yes.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure listening to you. Thank you.
Thank you.
I now welcome our second speaker today, Revered Swami Atmashraddhananda ji. I believe Maharaj has joined. Yes, Maharaj, please unmute your mic. Yes, Pranam Maharaj. Yes. I'll just introduce you briefly. Swami Atmashraddhananda ji is presently the secretary of Ramakrishna Mission Ashram Kanpur. He joined the order in 1989 and received his sannyasa vows in 1999. He spent 13 years at Bangalore and Mysore centers of the Ramakrishna Mutt and 2 years at Belur Mutt. Then from 2004 to 2016, he was in Ramakrishna Mutt, Chennai, where he was also the editor of the Vedanta Kesari. He has edited, translated, and authored a couple of books on some aspects of spiritual life, Indian culture, and higher values. For 12 years, he has guided the Vivekananda Study Circle at IIT Madras, where he used to conduct the Sunday class for the circle. For about 2 years, he was one of the monastic guides and instructors at the Monastic Probationers Training Center at Ramakrishna Mutt, Belur. On 9th October 2018, he joined the Kanpur Ashram as the secretary. So welcome, Maharaj, and please accept our pranam. So our topic today is Swami Vivekananda's patriotism, and Tarunga just shared his thoughts. So now over to you, Maharaj.
Namaste, and thank you for the invitation and the introduction that you just given. I'm very glad that I'm here. I would say it's like a satsang. We call it a study circle. Basically, it's a satsang, holy association. So here there are no selfish or self-centered interests, but the interest is about something higher, something larger, something more broad. So it gives a great pleasure to be in such a company. So I'm very glad about that and thankful that I have got an invitation. I shall share some thoughts about Swamiji's idea or Swamiji's patriotism. Swami Vivekananda is also called a patriotic monk of India, which is a very significant expression about Swamiji. That a monk should be called patriotic. Not that the monks are not patriotic, but Swamiji was called patriotic specifically because of his very explicit, very intense, and very deep love for India. How did this love for India emerge in Swamiji? So I think a bit of that study would also help us to understand Swamiji's view of patriotism. And we shall also study in parts what are his views about the future of India. Because that's very essential, because we are around more than 100 years away from Swamiji, 125 years. Swamiji passed away in 1902. Now, first, one thing about being a monk, Swamiji was an exceptionally different monk, because in our parampara of hundreds and thousands of years, we have had many great sages like Swamiji. We are blessed that we are born in that great country and that parampara. We had the great acharyas, great Shankaracharya, Madhvacharya, the Ramanujacharya, or the Nimbarkacharya, or the great sages of the Bhakti tradition. There are some well-known and some little-known sages, be it Guru Nanak Dev or Mirabai or Purandaradasa or Ram Prasad, many more. Now, we don't find these great sages or acharyas so clearly speaking about their love for India. It's not to say that they did not love India, they very much loved India, but their love was a spiritual love which mainly focused on spiritual life. Whereas Swamiji saw the contemporary needs and he put that love, that spiritual life in our language, the modern contemporary language. So it's a very unique monk that we had. A monk is supposed to love the whole creation. And Swamiji, of course, did that. But in one place, he said, yes, I love the whole world, but my loyalties are with India because of her spiritual background, because of spirituality. Swamiji saw India as a land of spirituality, and which we all know is true because historically, as I just said, there have been so many great people who have blessed this land. Swamiji called India as Punya Bhumi. You may remember when Swamiji returned from his first visit to the West. He was in the West from 1893 to 1897. When he returned to India in 1897, somebody asked Swamiji, so how do you feel after 4 years in the West, material West? So when you come to India, how do you feel? And Swamiji said, before I went to the West, I loved India. But now, the very dust of India is holy. It is a sacred Punya Bhumi. So Swamiji's approach was very different from, I would say, an ordinary patriotism, though there is, in that patriotism also there is sanctity, but Swamiji's patriotism was something still deeper. Sister Nivedita calls Swamiji's love for India as a expression Swamiji would often say, the queen of his adoration. Who is India, or what is India for Swamiji? The queen of his adoration. How did Swamiji develop this love for India? That's something I think we need to have a more serious study about it. We know his love for God, his love for humanity, but this love for India, how did it develop? So in my very limited understanding and my reading of Swamiji's life, and I find that this developed uh, from two areas or two periods of Swamiji's life. One was when he went as a parivrajaka around the country. He started from Kolkata and right up to Himalayas, then through Rajasthan, etc., then Gujarat, Maharashtra, down to Tamil Nadu, Kerala, and went to Kanyakumari. And in these, let's say, 4 years or 6 years, he saw India very closely. He saw two things in India. He saw terrible squalor and poverty and ignorance about even ordinary scientific truths. He saw exploitations. He saw starvation. He saw so-called untouchability. At the same time, Swamiji also saw the goodness, the nobility, the spiritual vibration that existed in India. So he went around, as he went around, he stayed with people of all types. He stayed with kings. And so that was the time when India was ruled. Although the Britishers were the colonial masters, the whole of country was divided into so many princely states. So Swamiji met so many so many kings, Raja of Ramnath, Raja of Mysore, the divans, certain queens. In the upper India, like in Gujarat, he met the divan there, two divans. He was a guest. If you go to Porbandar, the house where the divan of Junagadh lived, or Porbandar, and that's now the center of the Ramakrishna mission. So Swamiji had not only seen kings and divans and people of the high-ranking hierarchy of the ruling, the princely states. He also lived with many poor people in their houses. In some place, I am not very sure of that place. He stayed in a so-called, Bhangi colony for about a month, seeing from close quarters their lives. And he was very impressed with their culture, their devotion to God. He said the poor in India are like gods. That's what Swamiji saw. They're like gods. And again, he met many people who are very learned, people who are deep into spiritual life or in learning. So all that made him understand India in a very different way as compared to as we understand. So Swamiji was not an armchair knower of India, but the one who had actually gone through and seen India for himself. He had lived India. He had gone around. Um, he had got a first-hand ground report, so to say. And he went to Kanyakumari. There, the transformation took place. So first, he was a monk uh, with desire for mukti, which is what every monk wants. And Swamiji continued that great mission of human life. Though he was a Brahmagya Purush, one who knew about Brahman, who had actually experienced the highest reality. At the same time, when he went to the Kanyakumari, we know that incident. When he arrived there in 1892 December, he went to the temple of Kanyakumari. It's a very ancient temple. From the Mahabharata times, it is supposed to be existing. And after making pranams at the temple, he was inwardly very disturbed seeing what he had seen in India. I mean, coexistence of spirituality and such nobility and holiness on one side, and poverty on the other side, and so much of squalor and exploitation on the other side. So he wanted to resolve this. He wanted to find some solution. He wanted kind of a time for reflection. So he swam through the choppy waters of the sea there and went to Kanyakumari Rock. Now there is a huge temple there. More than hugeness of the temple, it's a huge memorial. People go there every day, thousands of them. It's a remarkable place right into the sea. I don't think there's any temple like that anywhere, as we find in Kanyakumari. That's around 50 years back, the temple was built. So Swamiji went there and sat there. Later on, Swami Virajanandaji, when he was recording Swamiji's life, he went around the country. He actually went to Kanyakumari, and there he found some fishermen telling him that they had seen Swamiji sitting on the rock for about 3 days. And perhaps the fisherman himself who told to Virajanji had supplied food to Swamiji. And in those 3 days, he was actually immersed in some deep inner reflection, meditation. And in that, he meditated, as we understand, on the queen of his adoration, on India. Think of it. A monk is to meditate on Brahman, but Swamiji meditated on India, which is to many people it's a geographical entity. But to Swamiji, it was not geographical entity; it was a spiritual entity. So he saw as India as a mother, as a motherland, as a mother, as a divine mother. So he meditated on India's past. Very unfortunate that today we do not know much of India's glorious past. We only talk about India of a few hundred years back, when India had so many wars and kings and fights and quarrels. we forget the glorious part of India. India's achievement in different fields of life, be it even science or algebra or surgery or language and many more areas. So we don't talk about it, but Swamiji had somehow knowledge of all this. He had gone around and studied manuscripts also in some places, talked to people. So he had an idea about India, besides knowing the poor and the rich and the learned and the ignorant. So he meditated on India's great past. And he also was deeply pained by what he had seen, poverty, exploitation, and deep sense of misery in the people. And he thought about India's future also. As he thought about India's future, uh, how India is to be raised. So actually, when we are speaking of India's, Swamiji's patriotism, we are actually speaking of a great compassionate heart and a mighty intellect joining together. Great compassionate heart which felt for others. You know, Tulsidas ji says of a man who is truly a saint, not just because he wears a dress, but because he is inwardly a saint. Tulsidas ji calls him as Sant Hridaya Navaneet Samana. Navaneeta is butter. So the heart of a saint is like that of butter, which means extremely sensitive to others' needs, extremely sensitive to see that others are not hurt or put misery, what empathy he has, so much compassion. So that was one side of Swamiji, and the other side is a mighty intellect. And third thing, when he was meditating in Kanyakumari, that happened was that he had an extraordinary power of concentration. It was not an ordinary man meditating. Although there are cultivated people who can think deeply and concentrate their mind on serious issues, but Swamiji's mind was something even more than that. It was a very purified mind which thought about the issue from in a very intense way. Because 3 days and 3 nights Swamiji was meditating in the open sea, without any shelter on the top, a deeply troubled person, because he loved India, he loved people. He saw how India was suffering and what was India's future. So the result was, at the end of it, in one of his letters, he has written that sitting on the last rock, last bit of India, I hit upon a plan. So what was the plan which he hit upon? He said that two things. First of all, he said that masses must be educated. Education must spread. We all know this, that the Britishers had very systematically destroyed much of our education, though they gave us certain things. Those who are well versed in history will be knowing this. They gave us certain things like they brought railroad and post office and factories to India, of course, to serve their own purpose. But it was a good thing for India. But at the same time, they also brought down our cultural entity. We were made to feel we are slavish, we are good for nothing, and all that. So Swamiji's first idea was that let education be given to all. And secondly, uh, and people should develop self-confidence and become self-dependent. And secondly, Swamiji thought, and he says that let me carry this message of Vedanta, which is a jewel of Indian philosophical system, India's spiritual tradition. Take this jewel to the West and let people know it. And it's a very historic decision. Swamiji thought that, if you go back to Swamiji's life when he was under Sri Ramakrishna, he once had a samadhi, and Sri Ramakrishna asked him, "What do you want?" He said, "I want to be immersed in that samadhi always. Just get down, open my eyes once in a while, eat something, and again be immersed in that infinite joy." Sri Ramakrishna says, "What? You are such a big man and you're talking so small?" Because Sri Ramakrishna's idea of being bigger is something even different from samadhi. He said that you will be that people tree under which millions of people will come and take rest. So on one side, he wanted to be immersed in samadhi, and now he had decided to serve India. So he took India's message to the West. We all know this, how it's a remarkable story, how he struggled there. We speak of his Parliament of Religion participation, which was a historic event for whole of India, that somebody stood on the world parliament or international platform and said, I'm proud to be an Indian. It was such a historic thing. Pandit Nehru has written about it, or many of the historians have written about it, that this was something which brought a new light into India. It brought in, like, we were all suffering from great sense of inferiority. And Swamiji's idea that I am proud to be proud to be an Indian, it brought something very badly needed. And of course, Swamiji had to face many things because he was the first Hindu monk to go there, carrying the message of India. And it was a pioneer's work. You see, he has to pass through many things. He has to blow through so much of opposition also. There were people like the Christian missionaries who tried to create a lot of trouble for him. We know also of an incident that he was offered a cup of coffee mixed with poison. But as he was about to take, Sri Ramakrishna appeared to him and said, don't take that. Which means Sri Ramakrishna was ever protecting him. It was a divine work that was happening. So Swamiji established Vedanta societies there, two Vedanta society, one in New York, I think he did, and later on in San Francisco. So these two, and brought the correct, authentic idea about India, because India was considered a, a land of snake charmers, superstitious people, people who just killed their children under the wheel of Jagannath Rath and all that. All kinds of things were spread about India. So Swamiji had the courage to go and say all the truth about that. In fact, in Miss Sister Gargi's 6-volume research book on Swamiji, Swami Vivekananda in the West, she mentions in one place Swamiji saying when he goes to England that if the mud from all the 7 seas is taken and thrown on your head, your means Britishers, on your head, it will not undo the harm that you have done to my country. Think of Swamiji's courage. A person goes to the Britain, and there, sitting before all, he has the courage to say this. Because Swamiji was a fearless person. He had nothing to fear. So he said this, what he had seen as truth. And then even he comes back to India. So the first part of his Swamiji is how he developed love for India, his patriotism, that he had seen India and he had seen its holiness and poverty together. On the other side, when he went to the West and compared India in a larger spiritual sense and other ways, and he further developed love for India. As he said, he developed the feeling it's a Punya Bhumi. There's an incident from Swamiji's life that when Swamiji was returning from the West, when he went to West twice. So when he was returning from the first time. After he got down, he asked one of the devotees who had come to receive him that if somebody speaks ill of your mother to you, what would you do? That devotee said, well, I will just catch hold of him from the collar and throw him away. Swamiji said, then I did right. So the story is that when he was in the ship, there's some missionaries who came to him, and there was one particular missionary who tried to pick up a conversation and later tried to tell to Swamiji that India was suffering because of its religion. India was suffering because of its Vedic roots and all that. Swamiji tried to convince him it's not that so. It's because we have neglected the masses. That's the reason, but not religion. But he won't listen. So twice, thrice, on 2 days, I think it went on discussion. And third day when that man went, Swamiji was standing on the deck on the ship, and as he started his conversation, Swamiji is supposed to have caught him by the collar and lifted him up and said, "One more word against my country, and I will throw you into the waters." The man was mortally frightened. And then, of course, Swamiji let him go. The point is, Swamiji loved India so much. That's why he did so much for India through that love. So when he came back in 1897, he gave a series of lectures from Colombo, because Colombo was part of India in those days. It became independent, if I'm right, in 1925. So British India. So from there, he went to Rameshwaram, then in between Kumbakonam, and then to Madras, and then further to Calcutta, where he was given a royal reception. In all these places, he was given a great reception. And then his lectures were recorded, written down, and later published. From Kolkata, he further went to even Lahore and some other places in what we call as Pakistan today. Then he came to Almora finally. So all these around 25 to 30 lectures, they are actually a treasure house of what Swamiji has said about India in true sense. We are speaking of India's Swamiji's patriotic love. We have to understand or read his lectures from Colombo to Almora. Without that, we cannot understand Swamiji's message to India. So, well, having said this about his background of Swamiji's patriotism, let me also now come to other side. See, once somebody asked Swamiji, what I can do for you. I think it was Josephine MacLeod, the great disciple of Swamiji. And she was an American and she was an extraordinary lady. She asked Swamiji that what I can do for India. And Swamiji said, love India. What a remarkable thing. That if you have to do something for me, which means love India. So I think this we should all remember, that how we can cultivate that love for India. And that's one thing which Swamiji wanted us. Now, if you come to Swamiji's understanding of India, so one is the spiritual understanding, and there's a cultural understanding, history of India, and a practical knowledge about Indian things. And above all, which very few people are aware of, the great harmonization of the so-called conflicting philosophical traditions which Swamiji did in his lectures, which is very important. How he speak of a common basis upon which we all stand. He spoke of how somebody is, belongs to the Shankara tradition, somebody belongs to Ramanuja tradition, somebody believes in the Dvaita, some believes in Vishishta Dvaita, and how Swamiji harmonized that. Speaking about his whole approach of harmony was that you should speak of the divine present in all of us, the divinity present in all of us. So this is one great thing he did. And then he had such a common sense and such a deep understanding. He said, we many times try to solve Indian problems using American solutions, which is not possible because India's problems are unique. India is much older than America. So what problems we have, America doesn't have. So how can you put an American solution? But it doesn't mean that we don't learn from America. We do learn from America. We do learn from other nations. Swamiji, in fact, he said, when I go to the West, it's not like a beggar, but on equal footing. So you give us your technological knowledge or science or a bit of the materialism, and we will give you our spiritual knowledge. We will give you our spiritual heritage. So that's the equal footing. We are not just receiving, but we have something to offer. And his ideal was that the ideal man or ideal human being to come in future would have combined both these features. He will have the best of the Western culture and the introspective traits of the Indian mind. Introspective traits when you can think quietly and turn within and be prayerful So this is what Swamiji very much emphasized on when he was speaking of patriotism. Two more things. One is that Swamiji recognized, and in lectures from Colombo to Almora, you'll find this repeatedly being said. He said that religion is the core of India. It's the backbone of India. In India, whatever is taught through religion remains. So this religion must be cultivated. But then again, he was not speaking of playing in the name of religion. Today we have the vote politics in the name of religion. That's not what Swamiji meant. He said that we are here to emphasize the core of the religion, which is spirituality. And he said an ordinary Indian were more, let's say, a villager. He was more educated in religion than somebody of his counterpart in the West. So if you ask somebody in the West, what is your religion? He says, I just go to church once in a week. And as far as we know, even going to church has come down in the West now. Whereas if you ask somebody in the East, in India, what is your religion? He says, right on my forehead it is written. Because all our people, they put some mark. Somebody is putting bindi, somebody is putting tilak, and somebody is putting vibhuti. So he said, here is my religion. Meaning that people in India have understanding of religion, and that is because it is inborn in them. This religion is not just this putting some marks. It's not the show. It is not something I declare myself to others. Religion is based on sadachara, on right conduct. If you don't have right conduct and you do so many vratas and you go to places of pilgrimage, it's not going to serve any purpose. This is what Swamiji was very emphatic about. He says sadachara, right conduct. Now, right conduct means right character. Without character building, religion loses its moorings. So character building is what Swamiji emphasized so much. He spoke of human development. He spoke of development in India. He said India will be a Vishwaguru. He spoke of India as a mother. In his famous lecture given in Ramnad, same in 1897, Swamiji says, I see that the ancient mother is awakening, is rising on her own feet. And it was like a prophetic statement. In those days when India was so poor and under so much of clutches of foreign powers, how could somebody stand up and say, I see my motherland rising, standing on her own feet? So it must be something very prophetic vision, and it cannot go wrong. What a man, if you say that Swamiji is a Brahmagya, one who knew the highest reality of God, there's no untruth that can come from his lips. So it's a truth that is going to happen today or tomorrow when Swamiji says that India will stand in the right place it occupies in the Committee of Nations. And that is India's message or India's gift to the world is gift spiritual. This is one thing we must remember. Not that India has not offered in the field of technology. We know how Sushruta, Varamiha, and others have offered their expertise in different fields. And similarly, we have many other things to offer like Ayurveda, yoga. But the understanding which India has in the form of Vedanta, in the form of the understanding of Atman, of Brahman, of how each soul is potentially divine, and how the goal of all spirituality, of all religion is to manifest that divinity within. And that is a special gift of India. It's not just at the thought level, but at the life level. So there have been people. So in Swamiji's one of his letters, he says, I think he writes about a Swamiji who lived in the Uttarakhand. His name was Kali Kamliwala Baba. So Swamiji had read about him or met him, known about his great work for the well-being of the people. He would go around on the Kali Kamli Babala Swamiji would go on a horseback, carrying kambal, and he's serving people in the interiors in Himalayas. Was, completely selfless, no agenda, but to serve. So Swamiji said, when such men live in India, can India die? That was Swamiji's approach. That was of service and renunciation. So how I can serve the nation, how I can serve others is idea of service, but that should be based on renunciation of ego, renunciation of desire for fame, desire for name. So that was something we sometimes seem to forget when we speak of patriotism. So in this context, I should read to you a small paragraph from Swamiji's one of his lectures. Swamiji speaks about people wanting to reform India. But who is a reformer? So I'll read this paragraph. Swamiji says, if you wish to be, if you wish to be a, if you wish to be a true reformer, three things are necessary. The first is to feel. Do you feel for your brothers? Do you really feel that there is so much misery in the world, so much ignorance and superstition? Do you really feel that men are your brothers? Does this idea come into your whole being? Does it run into your blood? Does it tingle into your veins? Does it course through every nerve and filament of your body? Are you full of that idea of sympathy? If you are, that is only the first step. So the first step is feeling for others, feeling for our fellow human beings and what we can do for them. And feeling that although they are divine, how they have forgotten their divinity. We had one of the monks speaking to a group of, to an audience in IIT some years back. And before that Swamiji had gone to some place where there was a seminar, and there were, young college students, boys and girls, they were quite unruly. So he had a tough time controlling them when he was speaking there. And then he came to the IIT and he saw them quiet lecture going on. So he made a statement, actually, that Swamiji hailed from, in his, before he became a monk, he hails from America. So he said, why you people forget that you are all descendants of rishis? Why have you lost your capacity for a sustained thinking? The rishis had that tremendous power of concentration. Why have you lost that? Go and awaken your inner potential. So that is one thing that we should feel for others. Then again, Swamiji says, you must think next if you have found any remedy. The old ideas may be all superstition, but in and around these masses of superstition are nuggets of gold and truth. Have you discovered means by which to keep the gold alone without any of the dross? And one more thing is necessary. What is your motive? Are you sure that you are not actuated by greed of gold, by thirst for fame or power? Now, this is what Swamiji defined as true patriotic. One who is almost, if we restate it, what Swamiji has said, has a deep feeling, and then he has got thinking, he has a well-developed power of thinking, and thus his motive is very pure. These are the three things necessary for making a true patriot. So we find that Swamiji emphasized on service. So this was a spiritual approach to service. Swamiji spoke of how we should serve others, thinking of God in others, thinking that there is God in others. So Shiva Jnane Jiva Seva. That is how he spoke of patriotism. What seva you can do to others, thinking that they're all divine. So much of talk, so much of big statements we people make, but how much service do people do? This is what Swamiji always referred to. So somebody who is quietly serving his fellow men, need not that you need to have a lot of money and then you serve, in whatever little way. We even when we read about Swamiji, we are trying to serve Swamiji. But let us not stop there. When we see a poor man, what I can do? We must systematize our sympathy into. We must institutionalize our compassion in such a way that we can see that our compassion gets converted into actual action for the good of others. So this is what Swamiji spoke of when he said Shiva Jnana Jiva Seva. And then he spoke of that when you have patriotism, you must love India, live India's past and India's greatness. And finally, Swamiji spoke of what we call as the man-making. He very much wanted man-making education, man-making religion. So what is man-making essentially? Seeing that the characteristics that make a human being a man, which means a well-developed human being with head, heart, and hands well developed, and deep feeling for others, unselfish, men of character. This is what really makes a person patriotic. Otherwise, we are only, and in one of his letters, Swamiji says, um, we have, I have nothing to fear from uh, talkers of religion. Only those who put into practice, they are the people who will really do good to others. So this is a little understanding about Swamiji's patriotic ideas. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Maharaj. This was a veritable satsang. In fact, I was so carried away by your talk that for some time I forgot that I have the role of the moderator. So about your point, the heart, head and hand. Akhandananda ji had said that our goal is a perfect development, perfect and equal development of these three capacities. And Swamiji himself had these three capacities equally developed. So who other than Swamiji can be the ideal in this respect? There's a question in the chat box from one of our members, Tanushri. Pranam Maharajji, my question is, what practice should we bring to our life to serve our fellow countrymen in today's context?
Service to others is a thing that comes to us in so many ways. So, what is service? Some people, as I said while I'm speaking, some people say that, oh, I don't have money, I don't have time, how can I serve? Actually, service can be at different levels. So, remember Holy Mother saying that one who has money, he will contribute, and one who has no money, he will sit and do japa. That's also a form of seva. So there are two ways. One is that you contribute something to a good cause. You can donate. You can plan your donation for a good cause. It's very important. Unfortunately, we do not know how much good work is happening, and there are people say a common Indian. Many times we just go to a big mall or a restaurant and spend a few thousand rupees. If you could take just a little of it and give it to a good cause, that will be a great seva. Then again, it's not just seva at the level of money. There's also seva at the level of giving ideas. You can give idea to others. If you are have a intellectual bent of mind, you take up those ideas and try to convert them into a very consumable things for the younger generation. Go and speak to them. Go and tell them these are the ideas. People can open websites or can write about it. And then Swamiji speaks of it, the help in three ways in Karma Yoga. He says one is the physical help, and there's the intellectual help and the spiritual help. So how we can do it? This physical health, help we can offer by way of offering food, clothing. It could be in a very small little way. Huh? I knew one lady in one colony. She lived in Delhi, and she used to have time and some money, and so have to come out of the shell. So there were ayahs working in her colony. She would collect some 10 of or 8 of their children and engaged a tutor to teach them. One has to take a risk to come out of his little shell. Just that's how she helped people. And there are some people who can serve by giving right information to people. That's also one kind of seva. So in whichever way, whether it is physical or monetary, what we call as the dana, or there is shramadana. Whether you do dana or whether you do shramadana, you offer your labors as a, in various ways we can serve. Point is, our idea is, the Hindu idea is that we purify ourselves by seva. Seva purifies the heart. I offer myself to the Lord as a spiritual discipline, and that helps me to actually gain spiritually also. So it's like a pathway of Swamiji in one of his lectures has said that I have created a new path through which you reach the highest reality by seva, and that seva means doing it unselfishly. It is from the Gita. Yogina karma kurvanti sangam tyaktva atmashuddhaye. Yogina means karma yogina. Those who do it as a karma yoga, as a spiritual practice, atmashuddhaye, for one's own purification. So if we take it in this way, we can definitely do seva in various ways.
I have one question, Maharaj. Despite whatever Swamiji did for India, despite the fact that India occupied a very central position in Swamiji's heart, so the central thing for Swamiji was India, Indians have somewhat forgotten Swamiji. He's there as a statue maybe, but he has not made his way into our hearts because our hearts are not large enough. But what is the problem? Like, why have we not been able to imbibe his spirit even after so many years?
So if you see Swamiji's message as something central to India, or how Swamiji felt for India, that we are not been able to absorb, is the same thing which has been echoed by an American lady who wrote a book. It's called The Gift Unopened. I think her name was Eleanor Stark. So she wrote a book. She's a school teacher. She said Swamiji came to America and gifted us something in the form of Vedanta, but we did not open the gift. I think it applies to us also. He has given us such a big gift in the form of his philosophy. So, although the Ramakrishna Mission has been doing, but the work which is before us is much, much bigger than what we are doing. Swami Vireshwaranandaji Maharaj, the 10th president of the Ramakrishna Mission, used to say, while we are doing a lot of work, but it's only a drop in the ocean. It's a drop in the ocean. So it's a responsibility of the others, the commoners, the people who are may not be in the mission, they are outside. Let them propagate Swamiji's ideas to the modern people, especially to the youth. Especially we should reach these ideas to the youth. If one generation learns, then it goes on to the next generation also.
There is another question from our study circle member Namrata. Pranam Swamiji. Today we find so many fake beggars. How to identify the real needy people?
I think the question is that you want to help, but people who should be right recipient are not there. This is thing I had also experienced with a gentleman here in Kanpur. He had the same question. So it's true, there are a lot of fake beggars. There are people who are not satpatras, as we say in Sanskrit. They're not satpatra, they are not there. But then there's also a way of finding out satpatras. See, be in touch with, if you search it, and you will be in touch with such organizations which are doing some good work. So who are uh, offering their lot for the good of the society. You can donate to them. Say we have various programs going on by the mission. That's one way of donating. And there is another way. There are other NGOs who have derived inspiration from Swamiji, and they are doing, like in Mysore there is one, Vivekananda Youth Movement. In Bengal there is one, a Parivar group. And there are many more which are quietly doing this. So you could offer them. But your question as to how to identify the genuine people, so it's very difficult. So we have one school, so in that school they take children from very poor background. So in order to ascertain that they are really poor, they have a very rigorous method, because many times the people want to take benefit. They just don't give you the right picture. A person is well to do, but he wants to avail of your goodness and your whatever you are offering, and they give a wrong picture. Whereas you need to scrutinize and come whether he really needs it. Yes, it's a quite a thing to find out the real need. If you give it to somebody who does not deserve it, so your dhanam, your charity has not been really very right. So in the Gita, we find that charity should be given to the right person. So one has to spend time, one has to find out its own uh, methodology to see that it reaches the right person. That's very important, very, very important.
If there are no more questions, then I think we can close today. Thank you, Maharaj. Thank you so much for this satsang this evening. Now I'll request Tanushri to give the vote of thanks.
Thank you, Arpita. On behalf of VSC JNU, I extend my gratitude to our speaker, Shri Tarun Goswami and revered Swami Atmashraddhananda ji for enlightening us. We are deeply thankful to them for taking out time to deliver a talk. I am thankful to all the members of VSC JNU, Amrita, Arun, Anindita Didi, Divya, Namrata, Srilekha, for their constant inputs and suggestion at every step. I extend my special thanks to Arpita for conducting the talk, Swagata Didi for poster design, Prachi for chanting Shanti Mantra, and Alka for hosting the meeting. Their constant hard work has turned this day into a success. I would like to thank Sri Anirban Chakravarti, who has served as the foundation for the entire event and for taking the hold of the technical team. His calm approach, continuous guidance, and yet silent work is a great catalyst in bringing this event to a success. Thank you, everyone, for joining and for your contribution to the conversation.
Thank you, Tanushri. So I would request Prachiti to close this session with the Shanti Mantra. Prachiti, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Alka. सर्वे भवन्तु सुखिनः सर्वे सन्तु निरामयाः सर्वे भद्राणि पश्यन्तु मा कश्चित् दुःखभाग् भवेत् ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः. May all be prosperous and happy. May all be free from illness. May all see what is spiritually uplifting. May no one suffer. Om. Peace, peace, peace.